Welcome to the Lindsay And Tony Podcast, where we talk about spirituality, business, and life experiences.
In this podcast, we're bringing our private conversations to you.
We believe that it's through discussion, action, and reflection that true change occurs.
Hi everybody, welcome to episode 69, the 3 things that happen when you avoid conflict to keep the peace. In this episode, we are going to be talking about exactly what happens to you emotionally and on the outside with your relationships when you do try to avoid conflict, even on the minute level. I hope everybody enjoys the show.
Hi guys, welcome back. We're so excited that you're here. Today's episode is all about the 3 things that happen when you avoid conflict and try to keep the peace. And this is a big topic, something that we've had conversations about over and over again.
Yeah, and I think it's a topic that needs to be dove into in detail so we could actually talk about what conflict are we actually trying to avoid, because it could be big conflicts or it could be like even the small, minute conflicts that I know me growing up, I tried to avoid.
Yeah, I was always the peacemaker in my house.
Exactly.
And I felt like by the end of it, I was so drained and really nothing got accomplished. It was like a temporary fix.
So that made me think of like, that's how I felt too, and a lot of other viewers probably feel that way. And I would even say, like on food choices, I would just say what I know the whole crowd wanted to hear wherever I was. Even that's to avoid conflict. That's on a minute choice. Just so I don't have to deal with, but I don't like that place. I would intuitively sense growing up, they don't like that place, so I'm not going to say it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a common theme for people too. When they hear you say that, they're going to think, oh my gosh, I do that too. Because I know I've done it before where they'll say, where do you want to go to eat? I'm like, I don't care, I'll eat whatever, but really in my head, I'm craving something like Italian food or whatever it is.
Right, so think about all of the silly things like that and the specific things to where you might not even know you do it still, maybe you do it still, or maybe you've done it in the past, and just think about it. It's kind of interesting. You'll start to realize, like I did, that, wow, I was actually not living in my truth on those small details, and it was causing me a lot of pain over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think now I feel like more vocal, well, especially with you. If I don't want certain food, I'll say, well, I'll have anything but this.
Right. So
I don't want it.
So it might be food with you, and it might not.
Yeah. There's so many different things that could come up in life, and I think that there's one thing to feed into the conflict, but then there's another thing to just be in the moment and just say, this is how I'm feeling.
Right. And we're talking about being in the moment and just saying, this is how I'm feeling. Mm-hmm. This is my truth. And not saying it in a way like, it's absolute truth. We're just saying, no, this is how I feel in this moment. This episode is part of helping you, the viewer, get to that space. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the first thing, number 1, that could happen when you do avoid conflict over and over and over and over. Well, what happens each time we do that? Suppressed emotion.
Yeah.
Suppressed emotion.
And I think suppressed emotion, we think that it's a good thing in the moment to kind of hold it in and not say anything, but over time it ends up building up, and then there's an explosion after, and you're like, wait a second, I didn't even know you were upset about that, and then all of a sudden it comes out. Right,
so it could have been the food thing. So say Lindsay was still doing this, or I was still doing this with her, and we were like, where do you want to eat at? And Lindsay really wanted to go to Chipotle, but she knew that I don't like Chipotle, which is not true. So she doesn't say this for a year straight. And then all of a sudden she blows up at me about a cabinet being open or something, something else.
Be separate. I don't like cabinets.
Well, no, I'm just saying, but
no, that's true.
It happens to where it's not directly related to where you're like, wait, what's really pissing you off?
Yeah, I would just say that directly, but yeah, that is one of those things where something maybe that's minor would end up being a huge thing.
So we got to think about that. So on the small things, think about it. What are you saying in order to sugarcoat it so that way you could please everybody? And that that you really should speak your truth, because it's like, who cares? If you want to go eat somewhere, just say it. If they don't want to eat there, they don't want to eat there.
And imagine if there's 3 people doing the same thing and they're all just trying to say what the other person wants, and really nobody wants to eat at that specific place.
And it's like, and you're living in this fake reality when it's like,
just say what you want.
Just say what you want, not one so you could go eat at the place. It's not about that. It's about you just, the energy's inside of you. You're just saying, look, this energy's inside of me. Chipotle's inside of me. And you're telling people that.
That's what it,
it's very
that's a
simple.
perfect example of it, because everyone's going to have a different conflict that comes up in their life. But this
Right.
is the easy, most relatable one to actually talk about.
Right.
And
this could be with where you're going on vacation. This could be with what kind of car you and your spouse are going to buy. This could be with what book you're going to read. It doesn't matter. I mean, I feel like they do this on different levels with different specific things. And the only way we really know if we're doing this is for us to actually think about this and to really reflect on, where am I suppressing emotion in my life? And how do I know I'm suppressing the emotion? Well, you feel it. It feels heavy. When you hold back, you get this heaviness, and then it turns to anxiety. And it, compared to when you're allowing the emotions to flow, it's more of like in a flow state. Even if it's not all the way flowing, at least it's moving.
And you feel exhausted when you hold in all of this stuff. So that's another common thing, where you feel completely drained when you're not expressing yourself.
So as you keep doing this over and over and over, guess what you end up becoming, which is number 2 here, is a people pleaser. You start to cultivate this character of people pleasing with where you're going to eat, with where you're going on vacation, with what you actually want to do with your life sometimes, with the spouse that you're choosing. A lot of choices you might be making because you're coming from this space, because since you were 4 years old, 5 years old, you got so used to telling people that you want to go to McDonald's when really you wanted Wendy's.
Yeah, and this just made me think of something too. Because I feel like I always called myself a recovering people pleaser, which that's like not even a good intention to put out there actually, because it's still saying that that's part of the past, which it's true, it is. But I feel like there's a difference between people pleasing and being kind. So there's 2 different things too. And I think people get confused because we're so used to throwing around the words people pleasing.
Right.
When it comes to me for business, like I'm very direct. Like, this is what I want. I can say it nicely, but this is what's going to happen. This is what is in place. But I can still be kind about it, and I can still do it in a way that is firm yet kind.
Absolutely.
People pleasing, what would you say the definition of people pleasing is?
I would just say you're not being true to yourself. Anytime you're not being true to yourself, you're people pleasing. I mean, you're either trying to please your ego or you're pleasing people. So I would define it as that. Like, I would say for what it's not, it's you're not being true to yourself. It's good to make the distinction between being kind and being a people pleaser, or being an asshole and being a people pleaser. You don't have to be either or. I think when you're not a people pleaser, it's kind of like the food situation. That's just a very simple situation. If you're being unkind there, you could come off as, no, we're gonna go to Chipotle and that's the bottom line, and you're speaking as if this is ultimate truth. I think the kind way to do it is to just say it in a way from a space like, this is my truth, and I'm saying this for the higher good of people. It's that energy, and you know that energy when it's coming from somebody because it feels safe. So it's like you're saying, hey, I want to go to Chipotle, but it's okay if we don't. I'm just saying this is a good idea. So that's the best I could really say on really sharing your truth. You don't got to say sorry for sharing your truth. You just got to say, hey, this is my truth, and this is what I'm feeling right now. I think it's as simple as that.
I find like the trap that I could get into when it comes to being called out of being a people pleaser is the way that I ask for food when it comes to being at a restaurant, which it's interesting because myself, I'm feeling like I'm asking one way, and how it's actually appearing must be different, because how a waitress might respond to me, it depends on the situation. I feel like then I feel resentful towards the waitress. So I'll say, can I have, a lemon with that water? Or can I have this? Instead of saying, I'm going to have a water with a lemon. And Tony will actually bring it to my attention because I'll be frustrated and say, that waitress was really rude how they responded to me. They talked down to me. And Tony will make me aware of, like, do you know how you actually asked them in a way that sounded like you were unsure about what you wanted? So it's something that I'm mindful of, but I feel like in every other situation, I'm more passive at times too.
Right.
So I feel like there's times that I could be passive.
And you're very assertive too a lot of times. But it's awesome how Lindsay pointed that out in her life, because this beautiful soul right here is really assertive. Like, she's very confident in 99% of areas in your life.
So I don't know what is.
There's a few, and that's the thing with a lot of the people listening, and with me, there's certain areas.
Well, I just thought of something too. I'm so used to family members in my house being so assertive when it comes to the weight stuff that they might not be the friendliest to them. So I don't want to come off as that.
So it's like your way to compensate.
I guess so.
Yeah, and there's different reasons why we do what we do, and it's like some of the things that we do were like with Lindsay, with talking and asking for a lemon and the way that she's doing.
Yeah, I don't even do
it's
that
like,
with any other area
It's like,
of my
why
life.
would I even do that? And it's funny when you start to reflect on it and think about it, you start to figure out, like Lindsay just had a kind of a breakthrough right there. I'm sure you thought of that before, but maybe it was because I'm overcompensating, because when I'd go out, this would happen. So there's different areas where when you stop and think about this, it kind of unlocks that pattern. And I think the only reason why Lindsay knew of this is because it was a pattern. So it must, if this happens consistently and it's different waitresses and waiters every time, it must be the common denominator, Lindsay. And that's hard to take sometimes. And I could see how, like, coming around circle, sometimes you don't want to say.
But I feel like I've been more mindful of it now.
So it's breaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you could see the energy moving.
So it's
I
one
can
of those
see the
things,
energy moving.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and I guess like it's not fun when it's happening, but if you are in a relationship with someone and you notice a pattern that's coming up for that person, the same things that's coming out, you're going to have to say it. And that's another part of the people-pleasing thing, because you don't want to suppress that, because then you'll get frustrated with them.
It's a huge part. Like, I can remember times when I would want to say this to Lindsay, and as I was saying it, I was like,
frustrated.
It's like, oh shit, I don't want to make her mad right now, because
especially when I'm hungry.
Yeah, and maybe the best time to talk to her about it is not like right when it's happening. We've talked about it other times too, like we are now, and I think that's another time. Figure out time. There's timing is key here with everything. Like, you want the person's mind to be neutralized. When Lindsay's mad at a waitress or waiter, her mind's not neutralized, so she's liable to like throw a knife at me or something.
No.
But anyways, you figure out the timing of it, and this is the way you break cycles. It's painful. It's not always rainbows and butterflies. It's not always like, yeah, I'm positive, I am great, I am. No, it's like
it's
sometimes
complete opposite of
as
that.
you lead to that, you start to realize these little holes that you have in your character, or not necessarily your character, little whatever you want to call them, little spots, blind spots, I'll call them. Blind spots that you might not have noticed before, and the people around you can see it very clearly. So I like to listen to what Lindsay tells me. So, well, sometimes I don't like to listen to it, but I know that it's good for me in the end a lot of times to listen to what she's saying, because she's a clear mirror for me. So should we go to number 3? Mm-hmm. So number 3, the whole point of this whole show and our podcast is to help you get results in your life. So everything that we're teaching you is to help you really move forward in your life. And when you try to avoid conflict in your life on the minute level all the way to up to the bigger level, you're not moving forward. You're not helping anybody around you, and you're not helping yourself. So that's number 3, is that the things that are pissing you off or frustrating you right now, the conflict that you're trying to avoid, it's going to continue to get worse, actually. I believe. It's either getting better or worse. I
definitely feel like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like there needs to be a stopping point, because sometimes we're so used to hearing our own story and complaining about the same things, because we get that temporary attention from people to complain about it. But until we actually get real with the situation, nothing is going to change. So we really have to say it right away. Like, this has been bothering me, and this is something I need to share.
Right. Going back to the food thing, I know it might get annoying to keep talking about it, but it's like, if that's your thing, next time, even if you know nobody else is going to go there, just for your own good, to speak your voice so it's heard, say Chipotle.
Exactly.
Or say McDonald's.
Oh.
Or whatever it is for you.
Yeah. And I'm very clear on that. I'm like, oh, you're eating McDonald's? But no, that's true. And it's interesting, because I talked about how the wait staff, like for me, it's been things like that's been coming up, like almost like a little roller coaster ride where like, ooh, I'm on a high with this, like I'm doing well with it. And then other times, there's a moment that creeps up and I'm like, ooh, the pattern's still there. But I would say normally, if you're doing several things in your life where you are people pleasing, it's going to show up in big areas of your life too.
Yes.
In my situation, like, I'm trying to be honest with myself and really think about this. I don't feel like I ever do anything that I don't want to do. Maybe I'll sit and listen to someone's conversation when they're complaining, and I'm a listening ear, and there's a time that I could exit and I stay too long. That's my other fault, where I want to be compassionate and listen. And then there's sometimes when I want to break that conversation, I don't break it fast enough. So,
right. So there's going to be different areas in this that you're really strong in. Like I said, Lindsay's really good at this area and most of the areas because we've been working on it so long and we're getting better at it.
Yeah.
We still have a lot of work to do, obviously.
Well, and I feel like that's why we're doing these episodes, because we're sharing our experiences, but also we're going through life as humans too.
Right, we're going through this with you.
We haven't mastered every single topic that we've spoke about, but we can actually talk about it on a level like, hey, we've actually been through this, and this is a breakthrough that's come up, and we need to share it.
Absolutely, and we're bringing you on this journey with us. As we grow, we want to bring you with us to grow. We're going to share our insights and be as transparent as we can with everything that's going on in our life to help you.
And sometimes when you do suppress, going back to the first one, when you do suppress emotion, if you don't deal with it when it's actually happening, it will come up years later and it will come out in an argument. Yes. And you'll be like, wait, you're still upset about that? I didn't even know that that really bothered you that bad. And sometimes you bury it, you don't even know that it bothered you that bad.
Absolutely, because energy is always building. Look at it like it's a ball. It starts off as, we'll say, a grain of sand. Well, that energy, as you keep it alive, that's why they say to keep your dreams alive, because that ball of energy will grow and manifest one day. Well, the negative stuff, too, that you're suppressing and not dealing with, well, it's staying there and it's building. It's not just sitting there like a grain of sand. It's moving to a golf ball, and then a tennis ball, and then a basketball, and then the earth, and then the universe, and all of a sudden, you got this catastrophic, life-changing event when it all started with this small little habit.
Yeah. And I have to say something that goes with that. When you just mentioned it, it just reminded me of something. And I don't know how we're doing on time.
Yeah.
But I can understand, like, for me personally, if I'm upset about something, I need 10 minutes. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I actually need to think about what is happening before I even speak, because I won't say the right thing. If I'm like, it will be like out of anger or frustration. It won't even be real. Because when my emotions are involved, I can't see clearly. I can't think intuitively. So I have to have that break in between. So I think it's important to express yourself, but also pay attention to your words too and what you're sharing in that moment.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. So not being where you're reactive, but to where you're responding, to where you're like, you're soaking in and you're like, all right, where does this go? Like, what's real in this? Yeah.
You know, because I could easily go and blame someone when I'm angry at that moment.
And I do the same thing. Like, I get times to where in conflict, my emotions will get in. I'm empathic, so I feel everything, and it's like, it's good that I have her to where she's like, all right, let's just slow down. You take a break, and then, you know, eventually the emotions kind of settle in, and then the weeds kind of go away, and you kind of feel the truth of everything.
And it is a process.
It is a process.
But if you deal with it that same time period, it's not going to come up in the same way. Like, we've done some exercises actually with different situations in our lives where we can actually walk through and see clearly and like close your eyes and say, okay, where is that emotion coming from? Is it really this, or is it back in time in my life? Like, I have a lot of stuff like that comes up with childhood and like ties to current life because of childhood. We all do. It's not like, you know, my childhood was horrible, because that's not what it was.
No, it was great.
But it was a good childhood. But as children, we can see things and perceive things a certain way that aren't in reality sometimes. And other times we're extra sensitive during that time and we needed more guidance or support. But that's, every child has that, no matter what life they had.
Right. Even you were a child once, so you got to figure out, once again, where are my blind spots? Where are those areas where I think that I'm really confident? Like, going back to Lindsay, being very confident in those areas, but then with the waitress thing, that could be a blind spot. Because, like, if you go to talk, like, say you talk to a coach before we're talking about this waitress thing, and they're like, wait, are you...
Is it really the
Are you confident? Well, I think it'd be more like, hey, are you assertive in your life? And you would think, yeah, I'm assertive. But until you really dive deep into all areas of your life, you're like, wait, I'm assertive in mostly all these areas, but then in this area. But in order to get to that space, you have to really focus a lot of your time reflecting on yourself and really, I wouldn't say fixing yourself, but adjusting your approach to where you have effects that are different than what you're having now. So if you don't like some of the effects that you're having right now, in reality, understand you are the cause, and that you just have to dig deep in your spirit and your soul and do that work and figure out where are these blind spots.
Yeah.
So should we end right there?
Yeah. I wanted to say one thing.
All right. No.
I have time.
You do have time. This is your podcast.
I know, but we have a certain amount of minutes, so I have to think about that. No, one of the things that I'm thinking of that maybe people could relate to too is when I'm putting in quotes, mastered a certain area, which it takes time. Like, I don't feel like we fully master everything in this life, but just say I'm working on like the people pleasing thing in a certain area of my life. Because in the past, I was like that. Like, I was very extreme where I wouldn't say what I wanted, not just about the waitress thing. If I see other people living from that space, it bothers me so bad because I already got through that piece of people pleasing in other areas. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So it bothers me because I'm like, oh my God, why are they doing this? They shouldn't be doing this right now. But it's one of those things you have to be aware that everyone's at different places. So I feel like that's another thing that could come up with these emotional things too.
It can, because once you experience like the pain of living that way, and then you overcame
want other people
it
to be better,
and then you see them, especially people you care about, you're like, I want to just shake you and tell you, look, you don't need to live this way because it's going to cause you a lot of pain.
I know.
And you could see it's going to keep causing them pain for the next year or 2 years. So you're trying to avoid that, especially being psychic. You could see that. But we have to get to the point to where we're patient enough.
Right,
and work with them where they're at.
If I'm triggered with that, then there's something right there.
Yeah, it's something within you.
To be honest about that. Like,
yes.
What is that going on? Why am I so annoyed when I see someone not expressing themselves like they really want to? Like, why does that bother me so
And I could totally relate to that too as well. I'm sure a lot of the viewers can.
It's something to think about. Like, this is like very vulnerable to actually share this, but I feel like it's the more vulnerable that we are, hopefully it helps someone think, oh my gosh, I've felt that before. But, when I talked to Melissa Carroll the other day, she was my guest teacher on the Mediumship Mastery Circle, and we were talking about shadow self, the shadow and light. Right. And I feel like that kind of goes along with it, to be compassionate with yourself when you're feeling these things, because you're human. So that's what it comes back to, is being compassionate when you're feeling these things in conflict, and just be mindful of them and aware of them and just look at it.
Absolutely. Be compassionate in a way that you would towards your son or daughter or nephew or niece if they were going through it.
Or your inner child when you were little, when they needed that. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. Share with us your experience if you've ever related to anything that we shared or anything that's come up for you. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
All right.
Bye,
see you later.
Guys. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. If you liked it, leave a 5-star review on iTunes, and remember, subscribe to our YouTube channel too.
If you can think of anyone else that would love this episode, share it with them right now on social media or email. And remember, getting results is a process of learning, applying, and reflecting. Stay consistent and continue to grow every day.